1970, with the support of Cuba's Fidel Castro, Chile elects the first communist president in the Western world. Salvador Allende immediately nationalizes basic industries and controls prices and wages. The Chicago boys remain quietly in the background. On September 11, 1973, General Augusto Pinochet leads a military coup against Allende. It is covertly supported by the United States. Pinochet and his generals bomb the presidential palace. Allende is either murdered or commits suicide. Between 1955 and 1964, graduate students from Santiago's prestigious Catholic University had received scholarships to study economics at the University of Chicago. Most of the students developed ideas on free markets and freedom similar to those of Milton Friedman and others at the university. They became known as the Chicago Boys.
With the population in shock, Pinochet imposed the policies recommended by the Chicago Boys. Removal of price controls, the sale of state companies, the removal of import barriers and cuts to government expenditure. Friedman later openly acknowledged the importance of the Chilean experiment.
Here was a first case in which you had a movement toward communism, which was replaced by a movement toward free markets.
It didn't work. A year later, inflation was 375% per year, the highest in the world.
And so Milton Friedman publicly and privately agrees with the Chicago Boys that a relatively short but painful shock treatment is needed to save Chile from the disaster of continued inflation.
Large groups of Chileans paid a high price for the change of system. This meant low incomes, meant high unemployment, meant bankruptcies. You cannot have a free economy without political freedom. And if you have political freedom, you need economic freedom to preserve political freedom.
Rapidly became clear that Friedman's economic policies benefited the wealthy at the expense of the poor. It was calculated that a family trying to live on the average wage had to spend 74% of its income on bread. Items such as bus fares or milk became luxuries, and Pinochet got rid of free milk in school, a move that echoed the controversial policy of the young education minister in Britain, who would later become his friend.
Now turn to you, Professor Milton Friedman.
Keep that go home!
Friedman and Harberger argued that free market economics went hand in hand with freedom and democracy. But in Chile, where their ideas were being implemented within the context of a military dictatorship, the opposite was true. Many in Latin America saw a direct connection between the economic shocks that impoverished millions of people and the epidemic of torture inflicted on those who believed in a different kind of society. Tellier had been Allende's ambassador in Washington. He spent a year in one of Pinochet's prisons before being exiled back to America. In 1976, Letelier wrote, "The economic plan has had to be enforced, and in the Chilean context, that could only be done by the killing of thousands, the establishment of concentration camps all over the country, and the jailing of more than 100,000 persons in 3 years."
For the majority of its citizens, modern Chile has been called an economic miracle. In one of the fastest growing economies in Latin America, Chileans are more affluent than at any time in their history. That the more socialistic governments of the early 21st century have reaffirmed the free market reforms of the 1970s and 80s would seem to be a second economic miracle. These shoppers live in a society of single-digit inflation and relatively low unemployment. Chile has one of the highest literacy rates in Latin America. Record housing starts reflect a solid middle class, and the quality of life in suburban neighborhoods like this one rivals that of North America or Europe. Chile is one of the world's major exporters of fruits and vegetables, especially during the Northern Hemisphere's winter months. Today, Chile is the second largest exporter of fresh salmon in the world.
Following the right movement to climb down